Hey, hello, hello, hello.
Hello.
Welcome, Dr. Janine Street, who happens to be my sister. Welcome to my talk show, the talk show, Let's Talk Life. And it's basically just a show where initially it was me and some of my friends, and we literally just would go live and talk about uh, issues that are concerning us. But because we happen to be Christians, they tend to be swayed or driven from a Christian or a believer's point of view or faith. So I always generally would say this is not a Christian show. I just happen to be a Christian doing a show. So, with that being said, I make no apologies for how things come out. I am led by God. One thing I know about you is that you too are a person who's led by God. So, even in our normal stance in life, the day to day things that we experience or go through, at the end of every day, or actually at the beginning of every day, it's God. So, welcome to the show. I'm elated to introduce to some and present to others none other than my sister, the one and only Dr. Janine Street. Hey! Welcome to my show. So, just so you know, we are live. My sister is not a social media person at all. She doesn't have Facebook. She doesn't have
No,
any of those things.
no Twitter, no Snapchat,
No,
none of that.
none of that. But we do talk a lot. I really, I'm not just saying it in her face. She really has been my best friend since the beginning of our life. I thank God for that. She's my friend, not just my sister, but she's really my friend. I trust her with my life. She knows things about me that even my mother didn't know. So that's a friend, and so I'm so honored. I'm really honored. Y'all, and I may slip and call her what I know her as, and
Oh,
that's Tiny.
please don't. You did it already.
I may slip and do that, but that's my sister.
Uh,
It really is my sister, but she has just done amazing things in her life. I think I said earlier when I was on is I know and believe with all my heart, Janine, Dr. Street, that mom would be so proud of what we've done with our life, and I
mhm,
pray that it just gives honor to her as a mom and as a woman, as a woman of color.
mhm,
I couldn't imagine, I wish she was here to live through these times, but it's hard to imagine like how she would live through these times. But
mm.
that's why she was able. God gave her us to be able to withstand in these days. So, with that being said, I'm gonna give you some time to just have a say, and then we're just gonna go right into the conversation. As you can
Okay.
see, what's going across the screen. What are we gonna talk about? Scars of race, religion, and politics. So, let me give you space to just have a say, to introduce yourself if you have anything you want to say before we go into our conversation.
Well, greetings. As Lorenda already mentioned, my name is Janine Street. I currently live in Massachusetts, and the reason I say currently is because I've actually lived in 7 different states
Yeah.
since I was born in Chicago, and so my life has been one of motion, one of change, one of adaptation, and so this is just one the next, I should say, iteration in what we are doing here today. And this is my first time doing something like this. I'm not sure how it's going to go. I will try to be as forthright and upfront on what our conversation is and how it rolls out. But
Yeah.
I'm not sure how this is going to go. So I'm going to take my cues from you, Lorenda, and see how we begin the conversation and continue. And I'm not sure exactly how the listeners and the individuals who will be hearing our conversation, how we'll interact with them. But
Uh-huh.
I am looking forward to any questions or comments that arise.
Okay, good. So the way it obviously we're live, and you have a we have a live audience actually, and um, so they actually are already chiming in with things to say. So while I'm talking and while we're talking,
Mhm.
I try my best to pay attention to the audience as well,
Okay.
seeing as I welcome them into the conversation. So just as proper protocol, I generally have done this show with some great friends, Virginia, Bridget, and Carrington. I did extend an invite to them, and so it really is up to them because generally they do the show with me. But I do see Carrington in the audience. I know Bridget is traveling right now, and I believe Virginia decided that she would step out. So, and that's okay. So, but the audience is there, and they are welcome. The audience is open to conversate, to have a comment or whatever, but we're going to do the conversation, and I'll try to pay attention to them and add in or comment on anything that they say, or if a comment comes up I usually will try to post that comment into the section. So they're greeting both of us. They're saying greetings to both of us. We have some longtime friends on here. Nisi, I don't know if you remember
Oh,
Nisi.
yes,
Yeah,
yes.
so Nisi
But we
Edwards.
can't see pictures though, right? We can't see them.
I can see their posts.
Oh,
Yeah,
okay.
they're more than welcome to come on. They can literally come on the show if they
Okay.
wanted to. One of my great friends, Deacon Whitehead, is he's viewing Tasha Bellamy. Do you remember Tasha
Yes.
Bellamy?
Oh my
Yes, yes.
goodness.
So hi to all of y'all, to my dear
Yes.
friend, brother
Hello.
Minister Carrington, who is usually one of my co-hosts. He's also on. He's an amazing young man. He reminds me so much of a king. Just there that he's a young man. I believe Minister Carrington is 22, young man, sharp, just a smooth guy, loves the Lord, and those are the voices that I'm so anxious to just start, pushing out into this world that we live in, because they have the heart of God, but they are also current with the time. So with that, let's see if we can segue into this. So just so you know, this week, basically more than this week, the Lord has been dealing with me, talking to, into my heart about scars. And so I did another show that I did late night last night, but just talking about the scars in life that we have. And a scar is a formation of fibrous tissues that come together, but they are the result or the outcome of some type of injury or some kind of assault or incision or breaking or damage to a part of the body. And the way it recovers is with a scar. And so when I speak of scars, we're going to simulate the idea of a scar to these subjects. So the scars of uh, racism, which is prevalent right now. It is just reared and I even hate to say reared its ugly head, because it's always been here. But I believe that the nature of what's happening in the world, the current world we live in, it has resurrected in a new way of not being ashamed, because there was a time where it had kind of hid and took off the white cloaks, the cone cloaks off their heads, and then put on suits and got in high positions to still be able to operate in what I consider the wickedness of racism. But
And
go ahead. No,
no,
please
I was
go.
just going to say, and if I can add, just to add to
Please.
your analogy, it's something in a way that's resurfaced. So it's always been at the foundation of this country.
Yes.
There's a lot of denial that this country was built on precepts of freedom and
Yes.
individuality, and if you work hard and get far, you can make it in this country. But the reality is that systematic and systemic racism has always been at the heart of what we're dealing with in the US, in the sense that banking, housing, healthcare, employment, all aspects of society have
Yes.
as its foundation a racist element. And we're just seeing it now. People are no longer willing to hide it, or they're letting it come out now, so that we who have long been victims of racist attitudes and racist violence, we have now evidence to document it. Whereas before, things happened in the shadows and we didn't always know about it, or
Mm.
were able to broadcast it. Now that we have that ability, the foundation that has always been at the heart of this country, which is basically racism, it's now out in the open. And so there's limited ability for those who practice racism to hide it. Not that they were ever
Yeah.
intending on doing it in the first things. But
right.
those who may not have been active practitioners of racism, now they can't hide behind it either. So I'm
Yeah.
hoping that this we won't see a return to the kind of silent. I would call that silent racism actually a little more deadlier than the overt racism that was
Ooh,
back in the
I
past.
agree. I agree with you. So I think the fact that, like, when you to use the word silently, because now people feel, they feel advocated, like they can
Mhm.
just speak out, which, even though I don't like it and we don't like seeing that because it's the reminder of what has always really been there. But when you can see how people actually maneuvering, because it's
Mhm.
actually foolishness on their behalf, if we would actually look for these actual avenues how we can move smarter, if we, because, see, if I can see how you move, I can be more strategic in how I deal with
Mhm.
you, how I handle you, or how I make my plans of how I'm going to maneuver. Would you agree?
Mhm. Most
Yeah.
definitely.
Yeah. So what would you say would be a ideal way, like, as like, now that we can see it, even though we don't like it, it doesn't feel good,
Mhm.
when it is just not a good feeling to know that people don't like you for the dumbest reasons. Like, it's just the dumbest reasons. And, as you know, you're talking between us, there's a lot of smartness and a lot of education, but we can just be real. That's the good thing about friends and sisters being able to have a conversation. We can walk in all the good, all of our accomplishments, but we can still be real with each other. And so, being real, like, it's so dumb to hate someone for something like, I was born in this skin and this is who I am. Why? And you hate me? But that, it just shows off the fears and the insecurities in them, that you would allow something as simple as the color of a person's skin to move you to
Mhm.
hatred. But
Yeah. Well, that's a tough question. If I understood what you were asking, you were saying
mhm,
that the kind of hidden racism that we endure
mhm,
now, and I can't even say it's hidden. It's just it's so ingrained into our systems. Like I said,
mm,
healthcare, policing, housing,
yeah,
jobs, all it's so ingrained into our system that we we sometimes as people who have been marginalized and minoritized by it, we can't we can't identify it easily or we can't fight against it easily as it would be in the case if someone just straight out called you the N word at work. You have
mm,
some way of
yeah,
dealing with that. But when it's there there are some pros and cons to whether it's hidden or overt. When it
okay,
was overt, believe it or not, um, Black society in this country, they were more united and they
uh-huh,
were able to
ooh,
because there was no denying the fact that you couldn't go to that store because it was whites only or something like
right,
that. So
right,
we were able to build up some infrastructures. Granted, they were not as large or as widespread as we would have liked, but we had that ability to kind of coalesce and support each other when
yes,
we when
yes,
we were when we were able to have some elements of integration and being, you know, led into the society that we had long desired to be a part of, what we found ourselves doing is we started distrusting our own sisters and brothers, the business
come on,
acumen and the business experience that they have, and we
yeah,
started patronizing the institutions. You know, you go to you want your Gucci or your Louis Vuitton, you know. So we started, you know, kind of longing after those things that we hadn't had in the past. And so
wow,
we kind of left aside those business entrepreneurs, those banks, those stores, those things that had sustained us during the time when we were not allowed to go into those places.
uh-huh,
So if there would have been an active and more integrated approach um, to doing away with racism after the Civil War, we could have still hopefully had those institutions and those businesses that built up. But because there was, as I said earlier, a kind of systemic destruction and purposeful destruction of those, not only
mm,
did we get rid of the things that we had, but we were never fully allowed to get into the new things of society that were out there. So we kind of lost what we had and we never gained full access to the other. And so this is why we find ourselves in somewhat of a worse position, because we don't have the tools to fight back, because we don't have those institutions that supported us in the past, and we have to rebuild those going forward.
Wow, that's actually, thank you for that. That was, and that's insightful. And as you were talking, Dr. Street, it it made me think of the word that I started with, a scar. So that would be an
Mm-hmm.
indication of the scar. So so there was definitely, there's something that was broken. There's a insult into a group of people, which would be, say, us, and but in our inability to heal properly, right, because something has happened, because we were healing, we were establishing. There was a time when we were a booming people, we were establishing our own, and then you said something, there was a shift in our desires to go after something that wasn't normally us. Makes me think of, instead of creating our own, we went after theirs. And that makes me think of the scar. That would be one of our scars of racism, that there's this so we how would we, like, how could we heal from that? Like, because we could talk forever on the reality that racism is here. I can't, I mean, I don't have a racism eraser to go and erase it out of people's minds and hearts, right?
Right.
But there is an ability in me to heal, and we were healing. We were the fact that we had begun to establish prior to, and I know what happened. Like, say, if you think about like Black Wall Street, and I know the fear of this group of people, this culture of other people came in out of fear, and they destroyed it. But what I see in a scar is that, even if, and I said this last night on another one of my shows, is what I know about a scar is that sometimes the scar can be interrupted. The healing process can be interrupted. Sometimes we interrupt it by, you ever seen a person pick at the scab of their scar?
Mm-hmm.
Like,
It makes it
why would,
last longer. Yes, makes
yeah,
it.
you're
Yeah.
interrupting the process. But sometimes there could be outside things or other things that can interrupt it. So, say, like with the Black Wall Street, someone came in and destroyed what they had begun. But the thing about a scar is if you give it the time that it needs, and you allow it to heal, to structure, and allow the parts to come together, it actually becomes stronger than the surrounding skin that we see as normal or natural. So the scar itself is ugly and it is not attractive, yet it is the strongest part of the structure now. So that knowing that, and that's a natural thing that happens. If we can take what's natural and then apply it to what we our actual life, like we've seen that we could do it before. If we, like, there's a gospel song, if he did it before, he could do it again. But if you've done it before, that means you can do it again. You may have to work harder at it. It may take a little more time. We actually are, for people that were drugged over here on crowded ships, as the only group of people here who didn't come willingly. I didn't take a boat on my own. I didn't handcraft something to come over on dangerous waters. No, we were ripped out of our country and brought to a land, and then enslaved as a people. Now, but we still rose up. That means, so there is this ability to still recover, to heal, because we've done it. But in some point, it seems like maybe, and you could help me with this, maybe there's a part, like there's a picking at the scab. Like, why am I looking over at the Louis Vuitton? Why didn't I just create why didn't I create something like what I want, but have the strength behind it, rather than, because it's still kind of slavery in a sense. When I'm now enslaved to you, I work and make my money, but if all my money and everything I do is still going back to you.
Mm-hmm. There's a multi-part answer to that.
Okay.
I would say that, so you're exactly correct in that the scar that is built, that we start to build up and hopefully protect us against future harm and future pain and future danger. What ends up happening is there are two ways it can be disrupted. One, you already mentioned, that the individuals in the power structure come in and and usurp it and destroy it and knock it down. And it's always easier to destroy something than it is to build something up. And I've said this before in analogies that I've given in other talks. Imagine a sandcastle.
Mm.
To build a sandcastle, you have all your different tools. You have your shovel, you have your pails, you have your different shaped
Yes.
plastic things, and so you plan it. So before you even go out there, you have to find the perfect place where the sand is not too wet, it's not too dry. You have to be able to be close to it, and it's not going to be too close to the coastline so that it can be destroyed easily.
Right.
And you do all this planning and you structure it out. But if someone is vile and violent and willing to, all the work that you might have worked all afternoon to create, someone can just come in and just kick it.
Kick it over.
So
Yeah.
it's easier it's easier to destroy something than to create something. So
Mm.
that's what happens when those in power see the arising of people of color starting to make something. It's easier to destroy it. And I would say the second thing that has been very insidious and very successful that
Uh-huh.
they've done is they've made us battle other minoritized individuals
Ah.
over crumbs. So
Ooh.
so
Wow.
the pitting of black and brown people against each other to make it seem like there's a competition for resources, there's a
Yes.
competition for jobs, but the jobs that we're competing for typically are at the lower rungs of society, in the
Wow.
sense that we come, just look at this coronavirus epidemic that we're going through.
Yes. Okay.
The individuals who are primarily at the what we call the essential worker level, so those individuals who have to go out, they can't sit in their homes and work on a computer and in the relative safety of their homes. They actually
Right.
have to go out and brave potential contact with individuals who have
Yes.
been exposed to this virus. And the people who inhabit those positions typically are those who are on the lower echelons of society. They have, less wealth, and they have less access to technology.
Yes.
And even the technology that they have, cell phones, that's at such a low level compared to what's need to maintain a job, for the long term, that it doesn't do them very, very good in the long term. So because those who have power have gotten us to fight over crumbs, we
Crumbs.
serve as
Wow.
our own worst enemy in some cases, because we
That's
become
good.
so enamored of the crumbs that we don't see this big buffet table on the other side, and we're not even looking at that because we're so busy
That's
arguing over
great.
smaller
Wow.
things.
That is a good analogy. I love that. This is good. Let me do this. Let me segue over to, I
Mhm.
mean, when I tell you they hitting up these comments, I already gave you the shout outs from just various people. Ooh, even Rashonda. Hey Rashonda, how you doing? I'm so glad to see you guys on. So Minister Carrington, he going back just a little bit, Dr. Street. He said even friends who aren't black. So you actually came and hit on it. He kind of said it. He alluded to it, and you went and hit on it. He said even friends who aren't black or of color are showing their true colors now.
Mhm.
And that's sad. He says unity. Yes, we are missing that more than ever now. Help us, Dr. Street. Nisi said, yes, better support is needed. And then Carrington followed up. He said, but we can't even support black-owned businesses in our own
Mhm.
cities. Those crumbs, we fighting over crumbs instead of building castles. Yeah, they may come and try to tear it down, but we'll keep building. If I can build it, I will. If
Mhm.
I built it before, I'll build it again. You get tired of blowing it up. You said Tasha Bellamy said she said they are comfortable with our lack of consciousness as a people. The more conscious we become as a whole, the more uncomfortable they become. I agree with her on that wholeheartedly, and so did the audience. Carrington said, "Enslaved to the system."
Mhm.
That's that scar. That's that scar. He agreed that your analogy was also very perfect. Tasha also followed up by saying, I believe the scars and the healing process are impacted by the expectations behind it. If we expect others to change in order for our scars to heal, it will not happen effectively. Wow, well
Mhm.
said, well said. And then Nisi said, she said, I like that, Dr. Street. It's more easier to destroy than to build.
Mhm.
Karen said, like crabs in a bucket. And that's sad for us because that's
Yes.
literally, we say that about ourselves. And I love that you like we're the ones, we have a long ways to go, and rather than joining together and building together, we would claw at one another. But I believe that's a part of that scar system that has been imparted to us. And instead of us taking full advantage of each other to heal together and heal each other, we, like you said, we looking over at them and just like, it's better to join them than to fight them. And I don't like that. But and we may think that's not what we do, but maybe.
But I am more hopeful now because what was exposed with the murder of George Floyd and
Come on.
Ahmaud
Yeah.
Arbery, and what was exposed is those individuals, in many cases, they look just like us. I mean, they
Yes.
had lives just like ours. They were
Yes.
they were going to the grocery store. They were, as poor Trayvon Martin, he was coming home with a bag
I
of
know.
Skittles, you know.
I
And so
know.
these are things that beforehand would have been kind of hidden in the background or under statistics of police crime reports. And I don't know if any of our audience members were like me in the past. Whenever you read a story about a crime, you automatically in your brain picture someone, a Black person. That was, and
Yes.
that was done subtly and deliberately so that we associated chaos and crime and degradation of a society with Black people or with brown people. But now we're seeing, and it's very evident, especially surrounding these protests that have occurred.
Uh-huh.
Now, when they see that we're trying to become more engaged and involved, and we're kind of sticking beside each other and
Yeah.
not letting the divisions tear us apart, what they've done in this most recent time is they have actually infiltrated our protests and sabotaged it from it within, making it seem as if the violence that was occurring. I'm not saying that it was, all the protests were goodness and light and bubbles and bubble gum, but there, for the most part, in the research they've done, they found that when there were instances of violence, it was from outside individuals, primarily people who were white, who were trying to either take advantage or do some looting on their own,
Uh-huh.
or make it seem as if the protest that was peaceful was largely violent. And so
Mm.
when they've done that, what that I'm hoping this will do, especially in the future as we go forward, is it will let us know that this is not a game. Power does not yield itself easily. Those who have
Right.
power don't just say, okay, I see you, I understand now, I'm going to give you
Yeah.
this
Yeah.
power. It doesn't work that way.
No.
It has to be, it has to be, and I don't mean to sound violent or anything, but it has to be taken, and in a way, hopefully, that is non-chaotic and not with an anarchy kind of mindset, but in a way through through I would say voting, through a way such as financial support of those
Hmm.
institutions that serve to uplift and assist people of color.
Uh-huh.
If we target our efforts towards those things, I think we can get farther and we can have this movement go further than it has in the past.
I think that's good. That's real good. So, but the thing is like, even though you said you're not trying to, because we do have to be careful not to to
Mhm,
send messages that people misread. But the thing
mhm,
is even though in the Bible says that the kingdom suffered violence, and the violent take it by force.
mhm,
Meaning, there's foot to the ground work that has to be done, and that's what we're seeing in this current day. People are, whether we want to add fed up or tired or whatever, but people are standing up and they're holding their fist up and they're saying, we won't take it this like this anymore. And that could be a element of the healing of, or adding to the healing process of
mhm,
standing up, because you're right. the, I am not uh those people that we are now advocating for, whether we're in the streets or on using our the advantages in social media, or speaking out. However you're doing it, it has to be actual physical work. And
mhm.
when we come together, we're much stronger together than we ever will be apart. Agree?
Yes, and
Absolutely.
and and don't get weary. Don't get
And
weary,
that's
because
good.
that's what happens when you think, or don't settle for symbols. Don't settle for
Yeah.
symbolism. So what was it? What Mississippi moved the Confederate flag off of their state flag? Big
Okay.
whoop. The
Not
flag never killed me. The
yeah.
flag never did
Mm-mm.
anything to me. It might have
Right.
been a symbol, and we're glad that that symbol is down.
Right.
But
Right.
don't stop just because you got that symbol out of the way. You still have to continue moving forward and making changes and recommendations and voting and advocating and supporting your businesses of colors. You have to continue doing those things, because the moment you get satisfied and complacent, that's when that, as I said before, that foundation, that systemic racism foundation, it's strong, it's deep, and it's wide. And
Yeah.
if you're not vigilant in maintaining a kind of barrier against it, it'll come back again. So we have to continue the work and the fight.
I agree. Now, so I have a question for you. Someone has a question. Minister Carrington. He said he wants to know if he wanted to know what your stance was on the Antifa and what they are doing in Portland, Oregon.
Antifa. So that, again, this is one of the symbols that has been brought out. Antifa is not an organization, and it's been used as a kind of scapegoat. If you think of what
Ah,
Antifa means, it means anti-fascist.
go ahead.
Fascist was what Hitler and the Nazis, that whole ideology was one about suppressing anything that was not what they call, white Anglo-Saxon Protestant, whatever,
Right,
WASP,
right.
or whatever it was. So as a mindset, I would hope that everyone is Antifa, because
Mm,
we should be anti-fascist, because that's exactly what it stands for. Now, if
yes.
there was a certain organization equivalent to, say, for example, the Proud Boys or the KKK, I don't know of any example of that on the left that exists. So there's
Right,
no, at least as far as I have seen, I haven't done the research on it, but Antifa itself is just a mindset that says I'm against fascism. And we all should be against fascism, no matter
right.
what your thoughts are.
Yes,
So if there's some organization out there that exists that is fomenting violence from a left perspective, I'm against that. Just as
yes,
I'm against, if there's some organization on the right who is fomenting violence, I'm against that. But
yes.
the concept of being against fascism, I'm I guess that would, I would hope that it would apply to most people in this country, because we actually sent our soldiers into Germany to fight against that. So
Come on.
that's no,
Yeah.
to me, that's no real insult to say that you're against fascism.
Right. So that's good. So I hope, Brother Karen, it looks like you answered this question. He said, he was like, thank you so much. That's good. Right. So that's really good. And any of you, if you have any questions for Dr. Street, just please send it, and she and I will do our best to answer. We are not experts in
Not
anything.
even.
We
No.
are we are just people who do our best to pay attention, but we the main thing we do is we keep our eyes focused on what it is that God would have us to see and say, and we use the advantages we've had, whether it's through education, whether it's through our careers, whether it's through our
Our church.
connections, our church. We
Mhm.
use that to our advantage. Our job is to bring the will of the Father from heaven to earth. And so this is some of it, just being aware, being alert of what's going on, educating ourselves to the matters that are at hand, but not getting caught up in the same token, because you don't want to be so consumed that you can't do the work, right? We have to just walk carefully. That's why you stay connected with God, so that He orders your steps in all of this. So that was actually a really good. You actually enlightened me on something in that, and made me feel a little more comfortable about my stand with that. So thank you for that. Thank you so much for that. Let me see. Karen just says, sadly, there are many Christians who are against Antifa, but don't know that it's against fascism.
Mhm.
See, that's why you need to educate yourself
Mhm.
about things. And we tend to be sometimes, uh, we just follow the masses. We walk into things without real knowledge or understanding. And if everybody looked like they going this way,
Well,
the joke is we'll run just because everybody ran. We don't even ask why
I
they
do that. I know I
don't
do that.
listen. Quiet as it kept. I'm running too, but
Yeah. I can ask
but
questions later. I got to get
yeah,
out of
yeah.
there.
But that mindset though is you should really know because you may be running with the wrong crowd. If it's a criminal running from the law and the law is about to draw guns and everybody running, you see them running and you take off running. Now you're implicated with them,
Mhm.
even though you may not have had anything
And
to do.
and
And
I
that's a loose.
no, I was just going to add to is it Reverend Carrington that you said that was
Yeah,
in
Minister Carrington.
Minister
Yes, yes.
Um, it's no accident that they dropped off the last part of that and just
Mm,
shortened it as Antifa, because that sounds like an odd foreign word, and we
yeah,
should be against that. So the people who do this, they do research, they study, they do focus groups on this. So when they probably had their focus group say, what if we said that this group was anti-fascist? That group probably said, yeah, I'm anti-fascist too. So they deliberately shorten it so that it's this word out there that no one knows exactly what it means.
that's
What
good.
exactly is it? And when you put that word out there and you attach an imagery of violence, people who are trying to overthrow the United States, then of course, because you don't know the full context of what anti-fascist is, you just hear Antifa.
Yeah,
It's a word that means exactly nothing. But because they have attached this imagery to it and this word association with violent overthrow of the government, people want to be against that. So we do have to make sure that we inform ourselves exactly what it
yeah,
is. And of course, like I said, if there are individuals on the left who are just mirror images of the violence that we see on the right in those white supremacist groups, then they both should go. But we do need to make sure that we understand that we should all be against fascism.
I agree. That's good. That was really good. So thank you for that. He said, wow, you enlightened me on that. So that's good. That's really good.
I'm
So
glad.
we could go on and on about this subject. I'm glad it actually went in a direction I didn't see it, and I love that. I love that. So let's look at the scars of politics. We might as well talk about it, get it out of the way, and because it is like the hot topic
Mhm.
of the world right now, and especially the nation that we live in, the country that we live in. So politics literally seem like they run the world right now. So let's just talk about the scars of politics. So and I'll let you can see, I'll let you choose where you want to start with that or where you want to go with that, and then we'll go from there. When we think about the scars of politics, what is happening with us, what has happened with us when it comes to the political system, this political world, the current political mood that we're in and dealing with right now.
Oh wow, where do you start?
I
Um,
know.
so there are just so many areas to start, but I would go back to George W. Bush. I could go back as far
Ah,
as Reagan, but
okay.
I was still a child there, so I was much more engaged when the election of George W. Bush occurred. That was the one of the earliest modern day examples we see where the will of the people was subsumed by a court system.
Mm,
And because in that particular case, the counting of the ballots was artificially suspended, because had it continued and they would have looked at it, I think the outcome would have been different. And what
yes.
that showed me is that, and I'm not going to speculate about what the politics of our listeners are, whether you're Republican or Democrat. I just look at it kind of objectively.
Uh-huh.
What I've noticed is that for the most part, Republicans, they will go all in. They will break the rules. They will shred the rules, whatever they need to do to maintain and hold on to power.
Hmm.
And Democrats tend to approach it in as if the world is going to be fair. So they tend to try to follow along with the rules. So we saw with that election, I think that was a consequential election in the sense that it occurred in 2000. That was one of the first times when the Supreme Court got involved to kind of decide an election as opposed to having the voters decide an election. So
Okay.
so we had 9 individuals take over the role of deciding who would be the leader of this country, as opposed to the millions of people who voted at that time. And that was because, again, it was a system of I guess fortunate events that were set up the way the Florida, it was being under the governorship of the president elect's brother. The Secretary of State at that time was also the campaign manager for George W. Bush. So they took that leverage of power and they turned all the wheels to get to the outcome that they wanted. And once that happened, and again, I'm not speculating on anyone's politics,
Uh-huh.
but George W. Bush was actually a fairly incompetent leader when he came into the presidency. He was uninformed about a lot of things, and he had a lack of curiosity to even inform himself about things
Ooh.
that were happening. And
Mm.
so when the September 11th event happened, that kind of set up this fiction or this image around the Republicans that they have, they are strong on defense. They want low taxes and limited government. And even though that had started under Reagan, it was kind of perpetuated as a image about George W. Bush. But the
Hmm.
reality of it is that the surplus that he had been handed from Clinton, in the span of about a year or two, all of that was gone. And the deficit spending came back. And I'm putting this in the context because the politics and the economy, and and there's so many things intertwined. So we have the politics, we have the economy, we have, in this case, healthcare, because they were trying to do something with Medicare, and we also have religious. Those things
Yes.
were all intertwined along with immigration. And so we see that start that occurred in 2000 kind of ramp itself up and be exacerbated till we get to the point where Trump is in office. So he took some of those same illusions that were surrounding the Republican Party, and he kind of curtailed it to his own, or molded it to his own kind of. He used those things to hype his own image, even though everyone knew, one, that he really was not that religious,
You're right.
given his past. Two, he said one thing about immigrants, but he used them throughout his organization. He hired them with less pay.
Mm.
Three, for as far as the economy is concerned, he was a failed business leader. But again, that mirage that built up about the capabilities of the Republican Party, which is probably why he attached himself to that party to run anyway.
Yes.
The fourth is the so we had economy, we had religion, we had business, and the fourth one was, oh, we talked about immigration. The fourth one is the utilization of the court system, and we
Mm.
find that he has actually appointed more judges during his 3.5 4 year stint than
Uh-huh.
any other in the past, any other president in the past. So why do I say those items? What we find here now, and if he gets this latest Supreme Court appointment, it's going to be life altering and country altering.
Mm.
If you were to put all of these things into a petri dish and see what the impact is going to be on this country, it's going to be huge. The only way that I think it can be overcome is if we do vote and change the system purposefully, and
Yes.
and put in place a political system that
Yes.
speaks what we want to have, which is better health care, a fairer
Yes.
economic system, a fair taxation system,
Yes.
a fair immigration system, one where we are no longer disrespected by other countries in the world, and one that is strength but based on compassion and recognition of humanity. We don't have that right now, and so we need to get back to that period.
Yes, I agree. That was good. So your thought is that the our vote can make the difference. Because you have people out there that don't really believe in the power of the vote. They don't believe that the vote is really matters if they vote. You get what I'm saying, where
Mhm.
I'm going to? And I say that because I do want to encourage people to get out there and kill and rock the vote this year. I really believe your voting is a matter of literal life and death, right? So, but I asked that question, just presenting it because of what you said and the influences that us making a change, or influencing the system to make a curve, to turn the curve, so that we're not at the crumbs. We're not
Mm.
the ones going after the crumbs. So does the vote really matter?
So I would say a qualified yes. And the
Okay.
only reason I say
All right.
qualified
Not
is
qualified.
because is because is because the system, remember when I talked about the foundational systemic racism that exists in this country? Well, that systemic foundation was set up at the signing of the Constitution, so that it affords equal, I shouldn't say equal, it affords actually more clout to states that have less citizenry
Yeah.
represented there. And so that whole electoral college is actually a vestige of a racist system, because it was trying to counteract the more populous parts of the South versus the less populous parts of the kind of South Northwest in that area. So it can be done, but what we have to do is ensure that people throughout the nation vote. And believe it or not, in the last election, I would say probably about 60% of eligible voters, 67, I think it was something like that, voted. So if we would have had people voting, not only voting anyway, but voting their interest, we might not have
Yeah.
had the outcome that we've seen. But people who were either disappointed in Hillary Clinton's previous activities, or who were disappointed that we no longer had a Black candidate on the ballot,
Yeah.
and thinking that it doesn't matter who I vote for, it's going to be the same people doing the same thing in office. I can guarantee not voting will ensure that the same people will be in the office doing the same
So true.
things.
Oh
And
God.
at least
And we,
voting gives you the chance of making a
yeah.
change. So that's why I
So
say it's qualified.
I like that, and I love that. I need to make sure we post that. I need qualified. I mean, a qualified yes. Please vote. Please vote. Yes, please vote. We urge you to vote, and nobody's paying us to say that. We're saying it because we really do believe that your vote matters, and it will matter. And it, just like Dr. Street said, um, the fact is if you don't vote, you can assure that you won't have a good outcome. You're assured. So get out there and vote, and our vote does matter. And we do need to change. We need to change the trajectory of where things are and how things are going. We've got to put a curve in what's happening here, and we've got to balance the scale, to say, right, balance the scale. So
Well,
I like.
also, if you
Go
think
ahead.
about it, if the vote that we have, even as people of color, if it wasn't so powerful, why are there such widespread efforts to take it away?
I love that. I'm
So,
so glad you see that, and that's the part that the emphasis we need to give to people so they understand the power of their voice, the power of their ballot, which is that. Because if it wasn't so powerful, why would they work so hard to take it from you? Why did we have to fight so hard to get it? Because it does matter. When we started being able to vote as brown and black people, it did change things. It did open doors. It did move the system to give us, even if that much more favor, it still did do it. And I see that happening. We're much more stronger. We're much more powerful. The healing has begun. Has it taken a while? Yeah. Why? Because people keep picking at the scale and the scab. And even some of those people are us. We're the ones sometimes picking at it. Yes, the outsiders are doing it too. And so one of the things to help that healing process to heal these scars, to move us into a more healed, stronger position, is to change what's happening. And one of those methods is in the power of your voice through voting. Would you
And,
agree?
and yes, and one more thing I would add. The reason I went back to George W. Bush was because 2000 was also another time of a significant census. And from that census, 10 years worth of change that were implemented based on how districts were apportioned, gerrymandering that occurred, as
Mm-hmm.
well as what states got what resources based on their population numbers. Again, 2020, we're in that same perfect storm because it's
Yes.
also a year of a census. And again,
Yes.
the powers that are in place, they will not give up power easily. They won't just lay down and say, okay, I'm tired, I give up. The efforts they've been making to to dissuade individuals from taking part in the census, because again, that will determine, and it'll start the role of breaking down that electoral college, because we'll
Yes.
realize that as much as we might love the parts of our country that are North Dakota, South Dakota, Montana, all of those, the number of people there, one representative, they each have one representative, and that's probably, I would say, like 1 million people. But in the city of New York, just the city of New York itself has 10 million people.
Yeah.
They don't have the number of representatives that they need because of the equal distribution and unwillingness to increase the number of votes in the electoral college. They're keeping it specifically at
Mm.
500, and in this case, that you have to get 270, yes, to get the full vote. So they're trying to keep that number of electoral votes. So even if we add in, allow Puerto Rico and Washington, D.C., we let their votes count, but they don't have representation because they don't have Senate representation, nor do they have House of Representatives representation. So we get their taxes, we get their income, but they don't have the ability to fully participate in the electoral system. So
Wow.
those are just, and again, that's a deliberate decision because they probably feel that those regions will be more likely to vote
Sway.
one way than the
Yeah.
other. So to keep those out as much as possible will ensure that the electoral college remains fixed for a long period of time.
Wow. So what would we do? Like, is there a way to alter, change, or it just
Mm.
is what it is?
Um, it you can change the beauty of our Constitution is it has change. It allows change to be built in, even though people want to interpret it as if it was still back in the 1770s. And that's called the strict constructionist way of interpreting. And that's the type of justices that Republicans tend to put on the court system. People who interpreted the Constitution as if we're still, in the 1700s. So they try to say, what did they originally intend? Well, we're what, almost 200, 1776, about 250 years from that time period.
Yes.
Life has changed. We have computers in our hand via our cell phone.
Yeah.
They even the fact that we have to vote on a Tuesday, that was in kind of a giveaway because of the fact that we were at that time an agrarian community, and they need to allow time after the growing season. So November is why they chose it, because nobody's planting or harvesting anything, and that gives them time to travel from their place to the Washington D.C. Capitol and cast their electoral votes. Even that whole system of how the vote was set up is based on an old model, and that's
Yes.
no longer the case. So when you see those efforts to suppress new voting techniques and new voting models, it's because there's a strict constructionist mindset in the court system.
Ah, that's good. That's good. So the takeaway from that would be one vote. The other is, I think it's important based on you gave in a short time, Dr. Street, you gave a lot of very informative information that, and this is no shade to anyone or any, that, but maybe some people aren't even fully aware of. Hence, going back to the idea of healing, of educating yourself, like, so that you understand, and like when we get out, and you said something earlier about not just voting, but basically knowing what you're voting for, knowing who to vote for, and understanding. And another thing that I've been learning about is the like different propositions, and like the part that's advertised, what's the underlying part, or what's the bigger part, so when I may agree with one part of it, but if that one part sinks an entire thing that would help or assist my agenda, then I've just stuck myself in the foot because I wasn't fully informed. I didn't have a full I didn't have I wasn't informed well enough. I didn't allow myself to understand or know about it. And
Mhm.
I've been guilty in times past of voting that way. Like, I'll just say, well,
Mhm.
I like this part, but I didn't study to read it. And then I learned later, like on something that I may have voted for, there were other parts to that clause
Mhm.
that actually now work against what I stood for or what I believe, because
Mhm.
they may do one part
Mhm.
and then they'll push that agenda, but the whole idea is, and they know strategically, they know to do that, like we'll give them this much because what we really need is this
Yes.
part under
Yeah. That's we call that satisficing. That's where you
Oh,
give them just enough to get them onto your side, but there's still things, and sometimes those things that are left out are crucial. And what I would suggest, because I'm not going to tell anyone how to vote, because that is, as I
yeah,
said, that's your own personal voice.
true.
But I can tell you what I look at. So, and we're bringing this back to our faith and our walk with Christ.
Yes.
There were certain parts of the population that Jesus Christ always advocated for, whether it was via parable,
Come
via
on.
his instruction to his disciples. And I'm
Yes.
just going to list them. It was the widow, the
Yep.
orphan,
Come
those
on.
who were in prison, those
Yep.
who were sick, those
Yes.
who were poor, and the
Yes.
strangers. So
Yes.
if we look at whatever party or whatever individual we're planning to
That's
vote for,
good. Woo, that
those
was
who
good.
advocate, yes, those who advocate
Good
for the
girl.
marginalized and the least of
That's
these.
and that actually, I was about to call you tiny. Dr.
You
Street,
did.
listen, Dr. Street, that right there simplifies it
Mhm.
actually. See, we
Yes.
make it hard, but it's actually very simple. Like, and I'm glad you said that, because that's like a big thing to me. Like when you're trying to encourage people, not that to tell them how to vote, but if these are the areas you should be looking into. And it's simple. It's no different than the 10 commandments. I don't care about the 700, not that I don't care, but yes, the Jewish nation made 700 other rules and regulations, but it was 10 that God said. And if you
Mhm.
stick with the 10, you will be okay with the others. And the same with that. That right there is good. Can you just repeat that? I mean,
Mhm.
really, honestly, because this is how we should look at things. If we're looking at those who take care of the poor,
Mhm.
the
I said
widow,
the
go
widow,
ahead
the
and
orphan,
say it again.
the widow of the orphan, those who are imprisoned, those who are sick, those who are poor, and those who are strangers. And strangers means immigrants. So
Yes,
if there's any, and this could help simplify some of your decision making, because individuals may fluctuate within one or two of those things. But remember, if they're serving, if the party platform advocates for those things, people can have disagreements with the one or two minutia. But if the overall platform supports the widow, the orphan, the prisoner, the sick, the poor, the stranger, then that at least gives me a kind of a background for how I make decisions. Sometimes that individual might be of the Green Party, you know. Sometimes more likely it's Democrats, and then people say, well, they're creating a nanny state, and they want the government to take care of everyone. And my answer to that is, I think that a government system should be one that does not serve as a barrier, but it serves as a net of safety so that you don't fall below that.
yeah,
It shouldn't provide you so much that you're content to just sit at home and not exert yourself, but
come
it
on.
should provide you with some minimum floor below which you can't fall. And that's what I would expect a government to do. So it provides the floor for me to stand on, and from that I can rise higher. But it provides a floor below which I can't sink lower. And we see right now with this individual individualism that we have
Yeah.
very prevalent, that people who don't have that floor, they sink further. We have people with mental illnesses, people with drug
Wow.
addictions, people with
Yes.
in poverty, and they
Yes.
have sunk so far below. And any government that doesn't assist the least of these, for me, that's a problem.
I agree with that. That's good because it just keeps it simple. And that was the whole that was Jesus' agenda on earth, is to take care of those who had needs. He said, there was one particular scripture where he says that the well have no need for a physician.
Mhm,
So
mhm,
my job is, when I go out as a minister, as a leader in our community and things like that, as a person who is well represented in my career, my job is to take care of those. I educate. You educate. You don't educate the people who already are on the level where you are. You educate those who are trying to rise to that level. Correct?
mhm.
So
Yes.
if I'm going out, and because what we see in our government right now, or in is the rich stay rich and keep rich.
And get richer.
Yeah. And the poor, sadly, because of that, stay poor.
Yeah.
The look at, like, where we are when it comes to healthcare for those who can't even afford. How can you not afford to have health care? That doesn't even make sense to me. How about those, like you said, with the illness of the brain, mental illness, in whatever form that is? We just gonna let them wander out? Even remember, there was a pause for the kid, the lunatic, who his mama say he just keep throwing himself in the
Mhm,
fire.
mhm,
He was a lunatic. But guess what? Even the man of God stopped. Glory to God. He stopped even for the lunatic.
mhm,
And then we'll pass the lunatic by. We leave the
mhm,
lunatics on the outside. And I'm not even being funny, because that's the truth. That's what we do now. We are so far away. Sadly, we've just moved so far away from the natural things that are expected of us. They're not even complicated or hard. Care for those who need caring for.
mhm,
You don't have, then if those who have should help those who don't have. And we've gone away from that. It's like you get yours. And it goes back to kind of what we were talking about in that scar of racism, and whether that racism is those against us or sometimes us against us, right? They're fighting for the crumbs. Instead of us helping one another and being stronger, we'll claw at one another and tear each other apart, therefore still breaking down the whole.
mhm.
If my eyes go against my nose, my face is just gonna be a mess. Right?
Yes.
It's gonna be
And it's this the sad part when you think about
yes.
it is there have been so many times when we as people of color were just starting to make it out of the difficulties that we have historically experienced. And the I would like and the reason I went back again to George W. Bush, we had 9/11.
Mm-hmm.
That that recession that occurred after that wiped out so much wealth, but the wealth that was wiped out after 9/11 is nothing compared to the wealth that was wiped out after the Great Recession for
Mm.
communities of color. We had
Yeah.
just gotten into having home ownership, and not only did it wipe out our wealth, which is the primary way that individuals build wealth is through home ownership, it took that away so that we had to not only lose our homes, but then when we had to rent, the rates of rent went up. So we were paying more for housing costs and getting less. And then the very people and entities that caused us to lose our wealth that was accumulated in our homes, they went in and bought the homes up cheaper and were able to turn and flip them. That's I don't know if you watch HGTV. That's when flipping houses became really big. So they bought these houses that we had, were swindled into getting. Remember, because they had the
Mm-hmm.
no knock
Yes.
loans and
Yes.
all that kind of thing. And then they bought them at a low price, put a little paint and a little woodwork and a few cabinets and mirrors, sold it at a premium price. So
Mm-hmm.
so we lost wealth then. And then the third thing now is the pandemic.
Yeah.
And has so systematically decimated communities of color, because not only are we the ones getting sick, but we are the ones who are the front lines, being very low paid for the work that we're doing. Again, once again, as we did in the past, keeping this American society whole and running. We
Yeah.
are. It's not slave labor. It's very close because we're making
It's very
poverty wages.
close. Yeah.
But again, communities of color have been called upon to keep the society running when everyone else is able to sit in their house and work from
Work
computers.
from home. Yeah.
And then the loss of jobs that has occurred for those people who were on the fringes of society already. And then finally, healthcare. A lot of people's healthcare is attached to their job, and when they lost that job, they
They
also
had no
lost.
help. Wow. See, and you're right. See, and I'm grateful to God, and I've been blessed. I know that you have been as well, and many people I know. But there are those that have not been as fortunate as we have been to maintain and have made those sacrifices and stood and just kept going to be able to put ourselves in these particular positions. And I hate to even say put ourselves, because it's just but by the grace of God that we could do anything. But it even more though, hopefully it puts us in a place to be able to do stuff like this, or to say to someone else, listen, together we can do this. We can be in these positions, and and not have to be the ones who fall first. We're the ones who fall first. We're already, because of systemic racism, we already are going to be looked at the ones that, if we're going to get rid of anybody, or if anybody gets to get out, it's them.
Mhm.
Let them go first. You notice we the first ones die in every movie. I don't understand that. But the thing is, that so just seeing this, this, like, for me, this is so good. This really is. You don't even know, that street, how you are even enlightening me on some things that, even though I may have known some things on the cusp, but you really have brought it home. You helped put an emphasis or an exclamation point on something that I knew, to help me to, as I'm directing, as I'm moving forward into how I maneuver. As we
Mhm.
grow up, we get a little smarter. At least we should. And so
Ideally.
I'm ideally, yeah, and I'm trying to do better and being smarter, and even like things like the vote, because I realize how important this is. Because now I have seed,
Mhm.
my children, and then they've duplicated my seed through my grandchildren.
Yeah.
So I want to, if until the Lord decides to return, I want to make sure that they don't, have the same sufferings that we've gone through. Now I know we've come a long way, because my mother, our mother, what they lived through, or even our grandmother, who,
Mhm.
God bless them both, their memory, they what they went through, they would like look at this as, this is amazing.
Mhm.
But
Mhm.
we realize, in living in this, there's still a great ways yet to go, right? So
Yes.
politics, I know that you have a time schedule, so I want to be respectful of that, and we have another area that I really want to go on to. Let me just look at our audience, and just try to, let me see, because I'm enjoying that they're very vocal.
Mhm.
Sister Cheryl said, "Hey, Sister Cheryl." She said, "Hey, Sister Benita." She said that the rich get richer and the poor get poorer. My God, and she's right about it. It is what we've seen happening. Carrington says they, quote, only think of themselves and their future generations only. But we need to think about our future
Yes.
generations as well. Amen.
I think that's one of our greatest failings, that we don't build legacies, and
Ooh,
we
come
tend
on.
to only live in the now.
Yeah.
That's not true for everyone. There are individuals who think beyond today, but what I would like to encourage us to do as individuals is think not 50 years from now, but think 100 years from now,
That's
and
good.
begin making plans and investment. That's my background in finance. And one of the things you
Yes.
learn in finance is you invest for the long term. And
Come
we
on.
need to
That's
just
good.
extend the years of our long term, instead of being, till retirement. So 20 years from now or 30 years from now, we
Right.
need to be thinking of what legacy do we want to leave the next generation, so that we can begin putting that in place right now.
That's good. Let me tell you, and I'll say this. I say this, of course, I'm an encourager, but I speak the truth. My sister is, when I tell you, one of the smartest. when it comes to finances. No, she really is. She is really one of the best. She's so smart and about money, but I remember she had to live on a budget, and I thought I was going to nearly die. I was like, what? But I can tell you, if I remember she and I went on a cruise. You remember that cruise?
Could you please stop talking now? Don't you have another topic that you need to put on this?
Listen, we went on a cruise, but I'm just trying to put the emphasis on why your words are valuable. I remember going on a cruise, and me being who I am, I'm the one. We're so different, but yet so alike. And she is my best friend. And we were on this cruise, and before we knew, we got invited to a VIP party because I went on a show while we were on the cruise.
You're
I
much more
did this
outgoing than I
I
am,
did
so
this.
that
I
makes
did
sense.
this show, and it was so fun. Dancing on stage. It was a starlit show,
Mhm.
and they invited us to this VIP party afterwards. We get in there. My sister is in there giving financial advice. We're on a cruise. We're supposed to be relaxing. She was giving financial
But
advice to the cruise member, and they were sitting there taking notes and
but it
writing it
makes
down.
okay. Let me just put this in context,
It was
everyone.
good. No,
So
I applaud you for it.
so the reason I think they needed very, very significant financial advice. Imagine that you're on a place where they provide your living, your
Yeah,
food, everything. When you get that paycheck on a cruise ship as an employee, you just need to bank that, all
I
of it, and
agree.
start doing your investment because
Remember when
they
I was traveling?
exactly,
Yeah,
exactly.
why would I spend money? They pay all my bills.
Mhm.
They did everything for me. So you put your money away. I mean, so I say that to compliment, but also to show like this is generally. I mean, we probably were the lamest, squarest people.
Remember, you took the picture of our shoes.
But you know what? Even growing up, and this is going to segue us into the scars of religion. So, all of this goes back to where, our roots and what we came from. And a big part of our roots was our religious beliefs and what we grew up believing. But so you might be wondering, like, well, why would you want to say scars? Well, again, see, scars are twofold. The scar reminds you of what happened. It says that there was some kind of interruption, some kind of injury or incision, or something interrupted what was normal. But it also says that I survived it, because the scar is there to say, yeah, it reminds me of what happened, but it also it celebrates that I survived it, that I came through it. And it makes me think of when Apostle Paul had gone to the Lord, and the Bible says he sought him 3 times. And obviously this thing was something so much to him. He said, he was like, Lord, he was like, listen, I have a thorn in my flesh. So thorns are painful little stick out things that if you touch it in the wrong way, it can injure you. And he said this thing was in his flesh. But God's response to him was, but my grace is sufficient. So I look at actual scars that have gotten on my own body, or scars of life that I've experienced. But I realized that yes, the scar tells me something happened, but the scar also tells me I survived, or I came through. I'm now stronger, because the scar on your body, if it's visible, it's one of the strongest parts of that part of your body, believe it or not. So the scars of religion. So we're going to segue into the scars of religion. While we think about that, let me just see what some people said. Tasha really is enjoying this. She said you should do this. Y'all should do this more often. We need enlightenment, and more people need to be encouraged to vote and understand why their voices matter. I know y'all are both busy, but weekly, monthly, she's cute. And so yeah, so yes, Sister Vanita said some people can't afford health care even with a job. Wow. Yeah, these are realities. So our cousin Yvonne is on here, and she's just saying, she's just giving us a shout out, saying
Hi,
hi to
that's
us.
it.
And uh amen. So I'm just skimming through right here. Nisi was saying, yes, make long-term investments. That's good advice, y'all. And I'm telling you, if you're going to listen to anyone, listen to Dr. Janine Street. All right. My sister, she really knows if you're in a hole, this girl will put you on a plan. You're going to be hungry. No, you won't. But you will come out of it if you follow the plan. Okay. You really, really will. And so we're gonna now go into. Oh, see, Tasha said I have affectionately named my scars. Okay. See, I view my scars different because usually we try to cover up scars. We want to hide them. And because of my line of work, I'm involved with making a lot of scars. And what I remember in a situation, uh, we were doing it was a situation where we took a cancer cells off of someone, and it had to go through a tattoo that they had, and they were so upset about the fact that the incision went through their tattoo, instead of looking at the fact, but we were like, but you're cancer free. Yeah, but this scar, it was like, we were like, but you're cancer free, but this scar. So
That's
scars,
called majoring in minors.
come on, like it was like it, but I see this all the time, like all the time. The things that it's the fighting for crumbs rather than going for the cake. You don't have cancer. That's the cake. Why would you care about the crumbs of the scar? Thank God for the scar. The scar should be telling you, I no longer have cancer. This scar tells me I no longer. You get what I'm saying? So, segueing into the scars of religion. So, this doesn't have to be, well, I don't even see it as negative. Because the scar is what it is. Sometimes we do get scars, even in religion. But I want to start with, let's just talk religion. So I'll ask you this, Dr. Street. When you hear the word religion, how would you, in layman terms, define the word religion? Or yeah, religion.
Wow. There's so many different synonyms that come to mind.
Okay.
But for the most part, I think religion is kind of a system of beliefs that unite one group together. And that foundation of that group could be, when I think of it as, people who follow Jesus Christ, but they could be, Jewish, and there could be Muslim. So it's some set of beliefs and creeds and doctrines that unite people. Not everyone may buy into all aspects of that, but there's some uniting force that when presented with some kind of external stimulus, they tend to act and decide similarly to others within that religious group.
Okay.
The reason I differentiate that is there's I use the phrase a person of faith.
Mm-hmm.
And because of my kind of self definition of that, it means that I might have different thoughts and beliefs that may not fit neatly into one religious doctrine versus the other.
Mm-hmm.
As you know, I'm Seventh-day Adventist.
Yes.
And so that system of beliefs does determine a lot of what I do.
Yes.
And a lot of actions and decisions that I make because of following the Seventh-day Adventist Church.
Yes.
But there are also some aspects that I respect the Seventh-day Adventist faith for, because it also encourages me to study and read and to know and grow closer to my Savior, so that when things change and come to me, I have a process through which I filter it and make decisions about how I'm going to react to that particular thing.
Amen. So good. So I'm glad you said that. So with religion, the following of, it's basically following an order of something. So, but then you put in my faith life. So I'm a religion. I'm very religious, and I do a lot of religious things. And but my religion is not my salvation.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So I like the way you said that. And so even being and me, like I probably see, I'm not like, I couldn't say that I'm something. We grew
Pentecostal,
up Pentecostal,
Church of God in
apostolic,
Christ,
Church of God in Christ, apostolic.
Revival Center. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. So, because apostolic wasn't Kojic, we grew up Kojic. We started out Kojic, then we were apostolic, which is where we spent the most of it. And I mean, even some of our friends are on here that grew
Mm-hmm.
up in that same
Yep.
church. And what we last week, our lesson, Minister Carrington actually brought this out, which was on legalism. So,
Mm-hmm.
legalism to me would be a scar, right? A place where you take your religion or your faith, and you try to format a way that says, if you don't do it like this, then you haven't done it correctly.
Mm-hmm.
So, and that can sometimes wager in on a very fine line,
Mm-hmm.
because as believers, it doesn't matter whether you go to a Baptist church, or you're Seventh Day, or you go to a Kojic church, or a apostolic faith, or whatever. So many types of churches out there. But the thing is, at the end of all of that, as Christians, Jesus Christ must be the center of your faith. Does that make sense? You get what I'm saying?
Yes.
Jesus Christ has to be the center of that, and then the formats by which how we bring that out or practice it. And that doesn't mean, I'm not saying that there's 100 ways to God either. I'm not saying that either.
Mm-hmm.
And that's why I said the line gets really fine, because the way I grew up and the way I remember growing up, and this is no disrespect, because this is how I grew up. I've just grown up since I grew up in there, which is we grew up being taught things like we couldn't wear pants. We were told we couldn't wear makeup. We were told we couldn't like we couldn't show our hair, so we had to cover it up with these little lace dollies
Mm-hmm.
that my grandma used to have on her coffee table. That was like decorations, but they took them and stuck a comb in them, and that's
Mm-hmm.
how we had to present ourselves at church as women. And even when you couldn't wear pants, your dresses had to be a certain kind of way, or you weren't considered religious. You were looked at as a non-religious person, and so they would judge if you were a woman and you had on pants, then you must not be of that religion.
Mm-hmm.
So the scars of religion can really run deep. But that's why these conversations are, I believe, necessary. But they're conversations you must have in wisdom, being led by God, because it the fact of being, and I'll just say, being, because you said I'm 7 day at you go to 7 Day Adventist church. I don't go to 7 Day Adventist church, but when I come visit you, I go to 7 Day Adventist church, and I actually loved it. And but when you come visit me, we go to 7 Day Adventist church, and then you come to church with me to the sanctuary that I worship in, when we didn't have coronavirus
I know
out there. Yeah.
that's disrupted so much when I think about it. And this is it's a very disruptive thing that's happened, because the connections that we make, not only at work but with our family members, and most especially with our church family, we can do it through Zoom, and it's kind of the same, but the fact that you can't hug anyone, you can't express your joy in seeing them, that's all gone away, and I don't know when we'll get back to some kind of normalcy surrounding that anytime soon.
So, with that being said, what is your stance or your thought in that? I mean, like, do you think? I mean, because I do. I mean, there is an importance of people needing to be around each. Well, I probably see it a tad bit different, in the sense of, I love the constitution of being able to come together with like-minded people to do like-minded things. But I also realize, because we've spent all of our literal life in church. We are for real church girls. We really are.
Mhm.
But I also, in that, I've watched the way church society itself has worked out as well, meaning the the ideal of people not necessarily, and you may not have this in the seventh day, but I'm saying like in the church that I've been in, that where it was gone, it almost seemed to be gone, the idea of really showing up for actual true worship and coming together to beseech the Lord and to pray and to come up with plans of how we take care of that list of people that we're supposed to be going after: the widows, the orphans, the poor, the prisoners, the strangers, right?
Mhm.
It was more of a almost social club, if I might. Like,
Well, that's an interesting point that you bring up, because if we of course we all recognize that we're living in the days of Revelation. We are in
yes,
the
yes,
period of Revelation.
yes, we are.
And so I think that the condition of that seventh church, the Laodicean church, it's not relegated to one denomination or another. We are in the Laodicean state. So that lukewarmness exists in Pentecostal, in Seventh Day Adventist, in Baptist,
Okay,
in
that's good.
Catholicism, and
That's
it
good.
exists throughout the church. And so I try not to attribute. I try not to attribute glory, and I try not to attribute fault to any particular church, because what
Right.
I realize is that when God returns through his son Jesus Christ, what we're
Yes.
going to see is he's looking for a heart in which
Come
he
on.
can reside safely and
Yes.
happily and joyfully. And so the people who are going to be caught up to meet him in the air, and those who have died and will be resurrected and transformed, where the mortal will put on immortality, those
Yes.
individuals, some of them are going to be completely unchurched, because God
Mm,
has so many different ways of reaching his children.
that's good.
One of the things we've been studying for our Sabbath school, this quarter, we're studying education, and
Okay.
and there's Proverbs 9 verse 10 that talks about the connection between knowledge, understanding, and wisdom.
Okay.
And so when I was teaching that
Send
Sabbath
me a
school
copy of
okay, I'll try to send it to you.
that.
When we were talking about it, what I shared with my class is that the difference, well, there's a linear relationship. So you first get knowledge, then you get understanding, and then you get wisdom, if we were to put it in a kind of linear timeline. The difference between knowledge and understanding is how you apply it. How do you actually utilize that knowledge and you gain understanding? The difference
Yes.
between understanding and wisdom is the passage of time. And so
Yes.
what I've come to understand in my maturity, as I've, you know, gravitated from the Church of God in Christ to the Seventh Day Adventist Church, is that the wisdom that you undertake that when you study God's word, not just in a superficial way. You have to study God's word very deeply and search for those hidden treasures that are there.
Yes.
And the wisdom that comes with that is the wisdom that comes from
I
interacting with
like that.
people, witnessing to people, understanding where people are coming from, commiserating and sharing in their sorrows and in their joys. And as you do that, what you find is that by God's grace, the differences that I would say Satan tries to erect arbitrarily between different religious denominations
Hmm.
are nothing compared to the unity and the cohesiveness that God can implant into our respective souls, so that I can identify with someone who has a completely different ideology or religious foundation than I do, and I can respect the God in that person as I would hope that person would respect the God in me, and together we can come together and resonate and worship God together. And that's how I see it. So that's why I say religion is a way that we come together, people who have the same mindset, and they hopefully are moving along the path towards their greater connection and engagement with Christ. But
Yes.
faith is what I have, and that
Yes.
crosses across denominations, and that's
Yes.
how I do it.
I like that. So it's faith. I don't even want to say versus, but it's faith over religion,
Mhm.
right? Not versus it. because
Or
it's
by
not
grace are you saved.
because
Yes.
of my faith, I will do some religious things. That's why my faith causes me to join with people that agree with how I move to serve the same God and to worship the same God, and that worship could be in the all of those attributes that we want to make sure that we're doing, as you mentioned, and I'm is taking care of those in need and reaching out and being the extended hands of God from heaven on earth, that we are the feet that walk on earth to take care of God's business, right? Redeeming mankind back to him, right? That's what we're doing. So that's actually, that was well said. That was well said, Dr. Street. Well said. So in that, so let's talk. So actually then, like, really, like, would you say then that you have or have experienced any scars? Because I don't have any regrets, because the Lord allowed me to grow. I can look back and see that I realized that there were things that we were experiencing legalistically. But even with that, I don't think it was harmful. It wasn't like a Jim Jones kind of thing. It was more or less, I really think people thought that they were doing their best to save us,
Mhm.
like to save us.
I probably have, if I could identify one scar, I
Okay.
think that growing up, and this is, it's not a scar so much as it is a deep scratch. Because I think
A
that
deep scratch.
when we were
I like
growing
that.
up, and I think this has more to do with our mom, who was a single mom raising five children,
Yes.
and she really relied on the church not only for um, religious support but also emotional support. She connected with those individuals in the church, and because she got so much from it, she spent a lot of time in church, and as her children, we spent a lot of time in
Girl,
church.
yes, we
we,
did.
were- we were there in a 7 day week. I would
We
say we were
lived
there
in church
five out
when
of
we
7
slept
days.
at our house.
Yes. And so I think if there was a, like I said, it's not a scar, it's just a very deep scratch. It's that when I went to college, I kind of almost rebelled against church because
Yes.
I mean, it was just day in and day out. I would go to work. In fact, I was glad that I got a job at USAID. So I wouldn't have to go to church some nights because it was overwhelming. We had no other activity
Yeah.
outside of church. And I think that in some cases can do a disservice to an individual.
Mm.
So that when I went to college, I didn't I didn't engage in church at all. In fact, for the full 4 years I went to college, I probably went to church 4 or 5 times total for that
Oh,
4 year
wow.
period. It was so bad that when my husband and I got married, he graduated that morning
Oh,
and we
I
got
remember what
married
he
that
used to call you. I know what he used to call you.
but when we got married, we didn't even have a church home because I just didn't I was not repelled, but I was done with church. And so
That's good though.
I think
That's honesty.
yes.
That's I think, but you know what? I'm not gonna tell your scars, but I would say that's a scar though. It is. I mean, because it actually deterred you from something. Now, thank God though that faith runs deeper
And
than
that's and
religion
that's why I say it's a scratch because the truth is in the Bible even says that if you train up a child
in the way
in
that.
the way that they should go when they're
Yeah.
old. So it wasn't a
Wow, that's
scar
good.
that I would look back at with a bad memory, but it was a scratch that's like, okay, that's not something I would want to do with my children. So it just made an impression on me such that when I raised my children, and my children were raised in the Seventh Day Adventist church, and so when I did that, I gravitated towards that church because one, it had such deep family representation
That's
within
good.
the church.
Yeah. And I
And
would agree with you. I really enjoy going whenever I get to go and celebrate with you at 7 Day Adventist Church. I love it. I look forward to that. Remember, I almost, I was like running late for a plane because I wanted to go to church with her.
yes.
Because I do enjoy, and plus you know what I love, and I think you're right, because I've watched the beauty of consistency that you've had and watched it in my niece and in my nephew. And even as they've grown, they're now young adults and moving into their own decisions like we did. We
Mhm.
were able to make our own decisions, even though they judged us harshly for our decisions because it was religion. and it was legalism, and not understanding that the scars that they were placing on us. And thank God we were able to find our way back, even like the prodigal son did, and make up in our mind that root of faith was enough that I could go back, even if I have to be just a servant, only to find that God, we're sons and daughters, right?
And he has so
But
much more in store. We're heirs. We're heirs of
come
his
on now,
salvation.
we are heirs. I get all the same stuff he get.
Yeah.
I'm entitled, and there's no rival about it. He's not upset. He's not upset because he's sharing. Matter of fact, he gives it to us. He made us joint heir. I like that. Let me straighten up my shoulders. Yeah. So I like that. So I mean, and I love that. And the thing is not allowing that scar to deter us, because I do know I have friends that felt the same way you did when we were growing up. Now, for me, I can't say that I ever left the church per se, but what I did, my actions, see, because you can still show up in the building, but your heart be far from it. Come on now, come on, be real with it, somebody. That we can show up in the building, because just because I go every Sunday and every Tuesday and every Thursday, but if my heart ain't there, and if my mind isn't there, and if I walk out the door and I become everything that's out in the world, what's the difference? What's the difference? Now, am I still glad I still came? I still came. I saw someone say the other day, I heard them say, they said, well, if you drunk, come to church still. They said, if you're high, come to church still. If if you just was out all night partying and jamming, come to church still. Because what they're saying is the power of what is done, with the gospel, and it's not in the building. It should be what's happening in the building. Right? Because the building doesn't save anybody. It is a great place to come together with like-minded people, but it's what's happening in the building with the people, and the love that's supposed to be shown abroad, and towards one another. So that was good. Thank you for sharing that. That was a pretty vulnerable question. I think sometimes, like, to just say, yeah, the very thing I love, there was a time, even in our lack of understanding, because that it may have left a scratch or a scar. I remember falling asleep in the back of the church trying to do homework.
I remember, girl. I remember. And don't let it be New Year's Eve.
Oh
You
Lord,
got to
oh
stay
Lord.
the whole night and for the whole next day.
Or remember, we weren't old enough when they did the once a month consecration.
Mhm.
Because that felt like concentration, but concentration. And they would go and stay the night. You remember, Nisi? They
Mhm.
would go in at what, 6 o'clock on Saturday and stay over the night, and mom didn't trust us enough to leave us home, so we would have to go there too, sleeping on the hard floor and then praying. I was just like,
Yeah.
Father, I don't want to. I mean, and some, like, I mean, sometimes, like, some of our siblings did walk away. You
But
know,
I think that's the power of testimony, though. So you're right that it could have been leaving me vulnerable to share that, but the desire to share that the path towards Christ is not easy. It winds and it weaves. It goes up. It goes down. It goes in. Goes out. So if that testimony lets someone say, wow, I stepped away from Christ, but if she was able to find her way back, I can find my way back.
yes,
And that was
that's good.
our Sabbath school last quarter. It was about the power of witnessing. And so that's one of the things that I've learned is sometimes we as Christians, we tend to not want to share the negative parts of our walk with Christ. We only want to share the good parts.
The
How
good stuff.
Yes,
Yeah.
and I think that again does a disservice to people who need to see that I'm going to struggle through this. I'm going to have times when I'm tired. I'm going to have times when I'm angry and upset and when
Yeah.
I'm crying. But the thing that I want everyone to remember is that even when you're going through those dark moments, Christ never ever leaves you, and that's in Romans. There's nothing that can separate us from the love of Christ, and he goes through all these different, whether it's principality, he just goes through all of that whole list of things saying, this won't separate me. No, that won't
Yeah.
separate me. Oh, no, that won't separate me. And
Nothing.
then at the conclusion of the matter, he said, I am convinced that there is
Yes,
nothing that
nothing.
can separate me from the love. And
Come
that
on.
is something that we have to remember, because even the people who've been in the church for years and maybe haven't had that many times when they strayed away, Satan, just because we get tired, Satan never gets tired. He will continue to present difficulties and strongholds that we have to overcome. So we still have to be willing to share our ups and downs to encourage others to stay on the path, because
I agree.
there's a crown for us at the end.
Amen. I like that. Amen. So that's good. Thank you so much. And for everyone, yes, this is my beloved sister, my one and only sister, Dr. Janine Street. But she's my Tiny. That's Tiny, and I love her so much. And I am just, even
This is
though I'm the
really
older sister, I have so much respect for her, and your consistency in your walk. I love how I love just I love you. You're my
nice.
sister, and I love you. You're my best friend. I appreciate you. She took time out of her. She has she's got even on Sunday. She has a busy schedule just like me. We both Sunday school. Well, she's a Sabbath school teacher, and I'm a Sunday school teacher. But guess what? We just teach the word of God, and this is a result of our mother. See, we are the legacy of our mother. We're the continuation of a mother. I mean, you remember the games we used to play? We had to
Mhm.
play who could read, who could find the Bible script the fastest.
Yes. That was fun though.
It was, but see, little did I know, wax on, wax off, that she was actually teaching us the word of God, teaching us to search the scriptures. I didn't even think about it like until later when I realized with being in school and being labeled as the walking Bible, because I knew how to biblically respond to stuff,
And you know
and
what
then
I do now? We have Bible Bowl competition, so that helps me with that. So when
see
I read the Bible, I don't just read it for surface knowledge. I have to read it deep, because when we have those Bible Bible Bowl
Bible
games,
bowls,
they
yeah.
ask a question: How did Jesus come out of the water after his baptism? How many people focus on that? The answer is straightway. So we have to know it to that level of detail. So you're
That's
right.
good though.
It becomes
You got to send me some Bible. You got to send me some of y'all cards. I know that. I mean, I know for years y'all have done, and y'all have been the Bible band, the Bible
they're
Bowl
not cards,
champion.
they're whole Microsoft Word
Oh
documents.
Jesus, help!
But before I go, I do want to say this, Lorenda. You have been my mentor in so many ways. Even from when I was in college, I would look to you as an example of how
Are you
to
gonna
be
make me
a
cry?
strong
Stop.
woman. No, I can't even. I know that you were going through difficult times, but your strength always amazed me, because I never felt as strong as you did. And so it's to see where you are now, and to see this impressive studio that you have set up, and the
You're so cute.
conversations that you have with everyone. Again, once again, you have been an excellent mentor, and I'm impressed all over again. So thank you.
You're beautiful. Your words are like shaking my little strong foundation. You know how I am. I always try to keep it, but no, I mean I appreciate you, and I'm so glad. I know this was big for you to do something
Yes,
like
I
this,
don't do this normally.
and me, I'm like This is the. You remember how many whippings that I used to get every
Yes,
Sunday because I
you're a
wouldn't stand in
natural.
front of a crowd. And my mother, our mother, she saw in us who we were. She saw it in us, and she pushed me to the front. She would push me to the front.
Mhm.
And so now I look back and I'm like, God, thank you for an insightful mother who I would have never saw this. And a lot of the things that I've experienced in life, a lot of the disappointments, a lot of the hurts, a lot of the abuses. But to God be the glory.
Mhm.
Even with every scar, everything I've gone through, the Lord, our God, has allowed us to shoot to the top, not because we're great, but because He's great. And the Bible reminds me that the greater one lives in me. I can do all things. If you was in my house, you can look over here to the slightly to the right and you will see it. I can do all things through Christ who strengthens me. I have a saying about my house. The cliche is that if walls could talk, well, guess what? My walls talk because I have beautiful scriptures throughout. I have murals of scripture throughout my house because I want to be reminded like you said, the deepness, the depth, and the power of God's word. And if there was anything I could give credit to about survival, it would be the word of God, which is God himself. He is the word. John said it best. John said, in the beginning was the word, and the word was with God. And then he messed around and said the word was God. That right there let me know if I need anything, go to the word. And I'm grateful that our mom instilled that in us at a very young age, when we didn't even know that, 40, 50 years later, here we would be able to give somebody on a weekly basis the word of God. You're teaching, I'm teaching, we are ministers in the gospel, we're leaders in our faith. Only God could do that. That is legacy. See, that's a legacy. And so through the legacy that mommy left for us, we, through the power of God, have been able to elevate that. And we ain't even, mom wouldn't be mad about it. That's a surplus to who she is and who she was, right? So I'm honored. I know that you ain't gonna believe who on here. Your brother, our big brother, Ricky. Oh, your sound went out. Oh,
Because I'm getting ready to start my next
I
meeting in a little
know,
while.
I know.
So,
So, Ricky, so big brother, thank you for coming down. I really wanted him to come on and surprise you. I was gonna try to bring him on camera to
uh,
surprise you, but he did come in the room, and so I just appreciate you. We
so
love you so
while
much,
I
big
have him on
brother.
there, I sent
Uh,
you a text earlier because I need Albany's mailing address. I have a check that came back. I sent her some money and I wanted to send it out to her again.
oh, I can give you her address.
Okay, yes, send it to me because I
Okay.
wanted to give her for her not so little one anymore.
Or Ricky, you could just or have because you don't have social media. We could reach out to her.
Why you say it like that?
She does. My sister has no social media, but it's probably wise. I'm if it wasn't for shows, I'm basically winding down myself. But
So just send it to me.
LaShawn is on here. Hey, Sean.
Hi.
Uh,
Sean,
so
I'm still working, hoping that you get your business started. I'm ready to help you with it whenever
all
you're ready.
right, all right. Um, And so, of course, our cousin Yvonne is on. This has just been so nice. You've imparted. Thank you so much, Janine, Dr. Street, Tiny. Thank you so much for just sharing your time. I know that you're super busy, and I applaud you. I love you so much. This
Love
has
you.
been an honor to my day. This has just blessed my entire day. So have a super, super amazing Sunday. To the audience, thank you all for joining in. And if you just got in, please go back and look at the replay. Why? Because we shared some vital information. I know Yvonne had asked a question about something about you finishing a story, but I don't, yeah. I'm not really sure which story, but she said something about in your own words, but uh I'm not sure. So, but nonetheless, thank
Maybe
you so
next
much.
time. Maybe
Yeah.
next time.
Yeah, so next time what? Okay. We will y'all heard her. We heard it here. I'm gonna do you like they did on the movie Moving. No, you specifically said 248 next time. Okay. So I love you so much, Tiny. Thank you so much for joining. We love you all. Thank you so much. May God add a blessing to your day. I pray that your day is blessed. Please, please stay safe. Coronavirus is still out there and it is very real. Please protect yourself. Uh, Physically distance yourself. Please be masked up if you must go out. Take care of yourselves. All right. All right. We love you so much. Any last words before you go, Janine?
No, this was a wonderful opportunity to spend time with you. So
All
thank you so
right.
much.
All right. Thank you. Everybody's like, please come back, Dr. Street. Please come back. All right. All
Bye
right.
bye,
Talk to you
everyone.
later. All right. Enjoy your meeting. I love you, girl.
Thanks. Bye bye. I love you too. Bye bye.
Okay. All right. Thank you guys so much for joining. I'm sure that you all enjoyed this. This was great. This was great information, and we could have gone on and on because she is so knowledgeable about all of these subjects that we were talking about, and so that's why I was glad to bring her in. So thank you so much for joining, and we will see you all next week. All right. Blessings. Let me see. This. Oh, we look. Oh, y'all do that. Y'all so cute. I'm looking at you. I know I'm still alive. I'm just looking at your. I know she's live, Sean. She went live with me. I'm so honored that she is. Thanks so much, Tasha, for being on. I appreciate y'all. Yvonne, Minister Carrington, thank you so much. Nisi, we love you guys so much. Um, this was really a great show. I mean, every week the show is always really good. It really is. But it was such a treat to have her on. I'm gonna talk to, I don't know if Donna is still on, but Donna and I are gonna do a show. Donna really has a story to share, and I just think it would be really important and valuable to so many, when especially talking about surviving and scars. So Donna and I'll get with you guys to let you guys know when that's going to happen, but I think it's going to happen pretty soon. All right. I'll talk to you guys later. Have an amazing Sunday and a prosperous week.